listening to Three Makes Baby, a podcast about fertility, family, and genetics. I'm Jana Ruffnow, a fertility counselor and author of Three Makes Baby. Welcome to the show. I'm here today with Alex, and Alex is an expectant father. Congratulations,
Thank you.
of all, Alex. And I know that you, in order to be able to have a child and for your wife to have a pregnancy, you chose to use donor sperm. That was the way that it was going to work for you guys. And you can get into that a little bit later. I want to jump right into kind of what's on the top of your mind, and that is Alex is struggling with who to tell and who not to tell. So his wife is pregnant and there'll be babies on the way and we'll be here soon. And they're unsure who they should share this with. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I know that's so relevant to so many people.
Yeah. So, like you said, we are pregnant and expecting in February with a baby that we use donor sperm to conceive. And we've been lucky enough that we've had a really good support system the entire time, from even before we made the decision to use donor sperm. We've had a good network of family and even some close friends that knew that we were struggling to conceive and knew kind of what we had gone through and the hurdles that we had to try to overcome to get to this point. And so that's the good thing for us. We do already have a group of people that know that we used a sperm donor. We just are at this point where everything up to this point has been theoretical. And now we have this baby on the way, and we're kind of sitting here going, okay, this is really happening.
It's getting real.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And, we want to make the best decisions possible for our family and especially for our baby. And I just want to know what the best thing for her is going to be. I know we have a good group right now of people that know everything and that will support her and love her and all that kind of stuff. But I just kind of struggle with where to draw that line. How far do we extend, this openness? Should we just be open to the world or only mention it if it comes up? I mean, there's a whole range, and I think everybody falls in a different place. So
yeah, so true.
Tough to know.
Yeah, and I just want, just for clarification, you are planning to tell your child that she was donor conceived.
Yes. Correct.
And so that's not in question. You're now, this generation, I guess we could say, is learning that disclosing and telling the child is the right way to go about it. And really you can alleviate a lot of the challenges that come with secrecy, that come with that feeling of betrayal later in life. And so,
yeah, I think, I know that we are planning on telling her from a very young age, from even before she can comprehend it. Just, I know that you've said a lot, just kind of practicing, really. It's easy to talk to a baby, and you can kind of practice and start having those conversations. And as they get older, it's just kind of something that they always knew. And there's never this big, memorable, in either a good or bad way, moment where they learned this major thing about themselves. Yeah. So that's really not the issue for us. We're totally on board with her knowing from the get-go. Mm-hmm. It's really just more about who to let in. Through infertility and stuff, it was so personal and painful. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of people that we kept that from, that we didn't really want to be a part of that, with us. But now even some people that we don't necessarily trust a whole lot, even family members that we don't maybe trust a whole lot, we just start to question, well, man, it's, does her grandpa need to know? Even if he's not going to be in her life very much, there's a whole lot of different scenarios like that,
Yeah. I think you bring up such a good point, because not everybody has, most people don't have a fully functioning nuclear and extended family. And when I mean functioning, I mean, like everyone's psychologically healthy and everyone's just gets along great. I mean, obviously this is real life, families fight, families have issues. There's difficult personalities in different, families. And so, yeah, so you're saying there might, in your family, or, we won't get into specifics, but there might be family members that you just don't trust to handle the information in a way that would be productive, and that may even be harmful to your child.
Yeah, I honestly, my number one fear, there's a few, a small number, but a few people that I really fear would at some point kind of, for whatever reason, lash out and try to weaponize our child's conception against her,
Mm.
or
Yeah.
against
Okay.
us. And that's really my biggest fear. And so,
Yeah.
if something is for her benefit, and it might be a little bit uncomfortable or even painful for me, I
Mm-hmm.
still am willing to do it. What
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do is, anything trying to help her out that's actually going to harm her.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And so it's kind of comes down to the boundaries, that you're setting for to protect your family. And, you would teach her, I know you would, but as a parent, you would teach her to protect herself against people that could potentially harm her, emotionally, mentally, of course, physically. And so I know you would teach that, if it were anything else. And I would say the same applies here. And even if that is a family member, because that's the reality. I mean, that happens in some families, is that there are family members that can be harmful. And so you have to protect them from that person. And you're the parent, you're the guide, the one in charge. That's 100% fair and reasonable to not share the information with people that you believe have the potential to weaponize it. Absolutely. That one's probably kind of almost more clear cut for you, but are there more like even gray areas where it gets even harder than? It's not that that's easy, because I know even, family is still, it's hard. Even if they're harmful
Yeah,
people, they're still family. So it's really hard sometimes to see that line when you're in it, when you're right in the middle of it.
sure. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like I said, we do luckily have a large network of family and stuff that does know and is fully supportive and everything. But I have a really large family, and sometimes you sit there and go, man, how far out do we draw this? Who does need to know? Because I know it is just natural for most families. As soon as a baby's born, there begins the conversation of resemblance, and I want to make sure that we never put anyone, especially our child, in any type of awkward situation where I kind of pass that burden onto her. And I know a lot of people kind of say, well, it'll become their news to share, but if I can make it easier by making it my news to share now, then I'm willing to do that. There's just, like I said, there's just kind of a lot of gray areas, even talking to friends about it. One of the biggest things probably that I struggle with is this whole idea of openness and who to tell and who to keep it from, because we know of people that live in our area that we've been able to connect to and become good friends with, because they were open with us, sharing not only their infertility stories, but the fact that they had used donors. And had these people not opened up and shared that information with other people that got to us, we would have never had that type of support and guidance going through the process. And I honestly am not sure we would be here right now, where we are in this pregnancy, without those people. And so I also, a lot of times feel that I'm being selfish.
Hmm.
I'm just protecting myself, my own ego, and
Hmm.
trying to avoid any type of shame or embarrassment. When
Yeah.
I put myself out there, I could potentially be, what they were to us for somebody else.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe someday. I mean, they were ready to share, and so they did. And I know exactly what you're going through, because a lot of people that are going through, and you did too, that went through infertility piece. You had that same question, and you maybe knew you didn't want to share, but you still got asked that question by people, when are you having kids? And
Hmm.
and you had to respond to them. And there were people that you didn't want to go into details with, and so you learned probably different ways to address those people, and how to answer those types of questions. But it's still so hard. So it kind of, that same approach that you took when you were going through the infertility piece is now moves forward. And that's kind of hard for a lot of people, because they thought, God, I thought this infertility thing was behind me and I wouldn't have to keep doing this. But when you build your family in a different way, those skills you built during infertility, you end up still needing them moving
Yeah.
forward. So what you do is I remember there's this exercise that I came up with because I was going through this too in terms of getting questions about, my own family building and when are you guys going to have another one? And so I came up with an exercise to help people because there's no clear cut answer. There's, to tell you like who to tell, who not to tell. It's so individual, like you said, but I can give you kind of almost a method to use, and anyone that's listening out there to use if when they're faced with these types of situations. And it's really kind of it's that exercise you maybe remember it called consider if, and the if is like an acronym for I stands for intentions and F stands for feelings. And so you take the I first and you look at the I and you say, what's the intention? What's the intention of sharing with this person? Or what's the intention of this person asking this question? Can I assess what they're intending here? Is it curiosity? Is it, are they weaponizing? Are they being divisive? Are they asking out of ignorance?
Mm-hmm.
Are they being, just kind of rude? And so when you can figure out what the intentions is, that gives you a direction, because that nice person who's asking because they can relate to you, the intentions are different there than the other person who's asking you because they have five kids and they want to feel superior to you, and because you had a hard process.
Right.
Those are very different intentions, and you're going to treat those people very differently. Same in the family. Same with Aunt Edna, who wants to put you on the spot, versus that sweet uncle who talk quietly with you in the corner. So these are different situations. So you consider the intention first, and then once you know the intention, you can decide: do I want to share? Is this safe to share? Can I share? And then the next thing that comes up was the F, and the F is for feelings. What's coming up in you? Is this making me uncomfortable right now? This, the fact that this person's asking me or bringing this up, do I feel uneasy? Do I feel kind of violated? Don't answer. That's giving you information. It's also giving you information that you still just have work to do, that you want to go home and just figure this out, sort through it, think about it. And so that's kind of the acronym that I give people, because there is no clear cut answer. You just take it like case by case and person by person. And, the timing of it, you kind of trust it and allow it to unfold as it does, and know that you're not hiding anything. This is your personal information. Your family and how you built it is not for everybody to know. That's very personal.
Right. Yeah, no, that's really good. I think you're right. I think there's been times where we have shared, not really planning to, because whoever we were talking with, it just kind of felt right,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so yeah, hopefully we can be at some point, comfortable enough to be more open than we currently are. Like I said, I want to put myself in those positions to be able to help other people that have been going through this too, because it's not easy. And especially as a man, I will say, I felt very alone a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a whole lot of guys talking about going through infertility, for one, but then especially having to use donor sperm. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's, I luckily, through Instagram and that kind of thing, I have been able to connect with a lot of guys. And the thing that I hear the most probably is, we're going through the same thing. How can I help my husband? And so I want to be able, not only through Instagram, but in real life interactions, face to face interactions, being able to connect with people that maybe, we can help them through it. But I think you're exactly right that there's just kind of have to be there's always going to have to be kind of this meter going on, where I'm kind of gauging the other person and deciding whether they are worthy of being on this information or not.
Yeah. The good thing is that it gets easier. It really does. Like before you know it, you'll be doing it automatically and you won't have to think about it. You'll like embody it. You'll know it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool place to be. But yeah, I mean, I think that's so awesome that you want to help people, and that you want to be that voice for people in the community, especially men, because men don't feel comfortable talking about it as much. And, men still need support and resources and people to talk to. So I think that's so great. And I think about Brene Brown talks about in one of her books, maybe Daring Greatly, about vulnerability and
Mm-hmm.
how we do need to be vulnerable and all these good things. But she also talks about not necessarily being vulnerable when you're still in the painful healing part of it,
Mm,
because then you feel exposed and you can actually be re-injured. And I remember her telling a story about how she got up and was talking about something personal before she was ready, before she was fully like through it herself. And somebody said something and she got some feedback and it was really hard on her and it threw her back a bit.
mm,
And so I kind of think the same thing applies here, is that you're so fresh into this and so new that it's okay to not be that person yet to everyone. You kind of pick and choose what's right for you and what feels comfortable to you right now, because you're still adjusting. And you already are a voice and being helpful to other people. So I would just take the pressure off yourself, because you're doing great. I mean, you really are.
well, I appreciate that. And it's really interesting too. I kind of sit here and think about that as you talk about the Brene Brown example. Most of the people that I know or know of that have been more and more open about their children being donor conceived have children already. I think I've always kind of thought, well, it'll be easier when we're on the other side, in quotes, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that those examples are a little bit of proof to me that that is probably the case. They're not, those people aren't hurting as much as I was a year ago. When they're out and sharing that information, they've kind of had their happy ending. They have their child that they love, and so maybe it becomes a little bit easier to share at that point too.
Absolutely, it does. And I was thinking about just how, like, the fact that so many men couldn't even talk about it, to the point that doctors were telling couples to keep it a secret. Because when sperm donation first started, it started in secrecy because the medical profession was protecting the husband, protecting possibly the profession, possibly the practice. It was very experimental early on. And so it began that way. And then it just I think it became very standard. And so for years, you have this like closed lid on all of this, because sperm donation started so much more before egg donation. Men they weren't even allowed to admit it happened to themselves. So talk about like this deep denial, just buried under there. And I've heard more than one times lately that the men that were the fathers had struggled with depression, struggled with, maybe some different types of challenges with addiction or various things over the years. And it would be really interesting to see some studies, because that secret, I think, just took up a residence in the family that was unhealthy, and men, didn't know how to cope with it. And so there was just this, it could be just ever present. So for you to even be at this place you are now is like leaps and bounds beyond where we've been, where this topic has been. And so it's like you're paving a new road. I mean, that is some hard work. It seems like you're a type of person who likes to, really make things happen. And it just takes time. It takes time. So I applaud you for that, what you're doing now. And it's just that step is taking us in the right direction, and it'll keep leading to somewhere. I do believe that.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I think that men need so many more services than we're giving in infertility. And, the UK has really, really been giving this a lot of attention lately, which is so great. There's a lot of voices over in the UK talking about male infertility, how to help men that are going through infertility, how to lift the stigma, the shame, realize it's a medical condition. And I think that's just amazing. So, we need to have that initiative starting over here too in the US, and get behind that and get some momentum behind that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's tough because, I'm sure it's hard to see the demand for those kinds of services for men because we're not out there talking about it. We're
Yeah.
not putting ourselves in those vulnerable situations to say, hey, I'm going through this and it sucks. And I want somebody to talk to, or I want to find others that are going through it or whatever. I think Instagram is a pretty good example of that. When you start searching through infertility accounts or that kind of thing, it is 99% women running those
Yeah.
accounts, and that are able to be more open and vulnerable and stuff. And so, yeah, I hope there's a shift for sure.
It is. It's like it's more accepted in society that women can talk about that, but men, in quotes, aren't supposed to. And, it's not true. The practice that I work in here in Dallas, there's an older man who runs a group, a men's group, and they meet every week. And I mean, talk about dedicated. These guys, they get together and, some nights maybe they don't talk much about, but they just get together. Maybe they talk about a sporting team or, but they have that shared time together and they can talk about other things if they want to. And so I know that there are groups for men out there that where men can meet and they can share with each other. And so you can find them. It's just they're harder to find for sure. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think? What would have helped you, or what still can help you? Is it that same kind of thing, like a support group where you meet with a group of guys and you can talk openly, or what do you think we could do to better serve men?
Yeah, that's a really good question and probably, varies person to person. But for me, like I mentioned earlier, we had those couples that we were lucky enough to meet in person and meet their children. And I think for me, it was so huge to see other families who, had children through donor conception that were just normal families. It just,
Yeah.
I think when I was sitting back thinking about this situation for ourselves, it always just felt so weird. And I don't know. I think I really questioned how it would look and how it would
Yeah.
feel and all of that kind of stuff. And so just to kind of meet those people and have it normalized a little bit,
That makes
and
sense.
even a slightly smaller scale, but still an important one, meeting people, in quotes, meeting people online on Instagram or
Mhm.
whatever, finding other people that were in a very similar situation and just reading through posts and about feelings that were just so validating of our own and
Yeah.
just feeling finally like, oh man, we're not alone. We're not the only ones that go through this. I think was huge for me, especially in the decision to use donor sperm. I think that was just something that took me a while to, um, I never was against it, but it took me a while to just finally really close the door on being able to pass on my own genetics. And so I think seeing those other people, not only in person, but even, like I said, on Instagram was really, really big for me.
Yeah, that could be really helpful to a lot of people. So I hope I didn't brush over your question too much about the who to tell, because that is such a huge question and it's such a good question. So many people have that same concern and worry about how it's all going to work out. And one day at a time, I think there is time for this to all unfold naturally and a bit slowly. And so you can just kind of take it as it comes to a certain extent with who to tell and who not to tell, and trust what's coming your way. And, always regroup with your wife and say, hey, this happened tonight and it was weird. I remember going to parties and I would have like a really bad situation come up. I'd get asked this terrible question and I looked like an idiot and was caught off guard and fumbling around with my words and then turning bright red and embarrassed. And I remember coming home just mortified because I didn't handle that right. Maybe I said too much about our story, or maybe I don't know, it just didn't feel right. And so I would go home and I would talk to my husband and I would talk about it and I'd say, what can I do differently next time? Because that didn't feel good and I don't want to be in that position again. And if I'm going to move forward with confidence with this, then I want to get this to a point where I can handle these situations and they don't throw me off guard. They don't throw me off. And I would just kind of go through it in my mind and go, okay, what would I do differently? How can I do that? I know I'm not a rude person, so I'm not going to be mean and rude to people. And so I would just kind of rehearse and think it through and go, okay, I know what I can do. I can do it. I can say it this. And somebody says that to me, or, hey, I can make a joke here, or, so it's almost like case by case, scenario by scenario. And it's like learn as you go. It's experience.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can
Yeah.
describe it.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I know in my own experience, it has already been, easier and easier the more we get into it. I think it helps, that we've never had any type of, adverse reaction or anything. Everybody's always been very loving and supportive. Probably that some of that is thanks to the fact that we have been, pretty selective with who we're going to trust with this information. But I think the truth is too, a lot of people probably just don't care as much as I think they will. But
Mhm.
one thing that I did, especially after coming in contact with you and getting your book and starting to learn as much as I could about, all things donor conception, I worried about this sharing part of it.
Mhm.
And I worried that if I'm not willing to share, then maybe I haven't fully, really accepted what we've gone through. Maybe I haven't really accepted what, what my condition, or the fact that we use donor sperm or whatever. And so I just kind of felt like, I want to be comfortable in that decision and confident in that decision, because we did decide that this is the best decision for us. And it was the best decision for us, and so I want our daughter to feel that way. I want her to never question, herself, and I want her to be confident. But one thing I did to try to kind of work on it, just being able to talk about it, was we were getting together with a small group of friends at our house, and I told my wife before we got together that I was going to tell them that night. I was going to tell that group, and this is before we had really begun treatment, but after we had decided that we were going to move forward with using donor sperm. And so it's a small group setting where we kind of go around the room and just share what's going on with us, and really close friends, people that I knew I could trust, that care about me. But I just decided to share with them, and the reaction that I got, the outpouring of love and support that we've had from them since then too, has really been big for me. And I think that particular meeting really kind of instilled some confidence in me. You said, it kind of gets easier as you go. And I think, like I said, I think maybe when you have, when I'm holding a baby in my arms, I'm probably going to have another level of confidence to be
Mm-hmm.
able to just
Yeah.
say, yeah, this is how we got here. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're not ashamed of it. There's probably some baby steps along the way, but I think kind of making myself practice talking about it to those
Mm-hmm.
people has really been big for me too.
That's a great way to do it. And what sounds like it was such an amazing and supportive, safe place to talk about it too. So I'm really glad you had that. That's really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes time. It just takes time. And you don't have to be 100% ready and comfortable and open and willing to talk about it to move forward. It just takes time. And it's an adjustment. It's like acclimating to a new place. You have to just get used to what that feels like and get comfortable there. And while you're getting comfortable, you're not necessarily ready to just tell everybody. And sometimes it's a personality thing too. Some people are just, they're more private than others and not as open. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
I'm definitely more of a private person probably in my
Hmm.
personal life. I just, like I said, it's the main thing for me is what's going to be best for our child. And, so we're just trying to work through that. I know there's a lot of gray areas and stuff. I think part of what comes with the territory of this, if we're planning on being open with her from day one, is that little kids are prone to say anything. And so she could be the one telling lots of people in our life. I don't know. I think one of the things that scares me though is her getting, as a young impressionable child, saying something about her donor or something like that, and maybe getting some type of sideways reaction from a family member, or something like that. I think that's probably my biggest fear, and biggest reason why I have these questions about, how far do we extend this line of communication within family, especially, because I would hate for her to ever kind of catch any of that maybe we could get out of the way now, and kind of, I would much rather absorb it for her
Yeah.
now.
People say the darndest things. I never tell parents it won't happen because it could,
Hmm.
you know, and try not to take it all on now because it's one day at a time. But when you go through that, you go through it together. You go through it as a family together. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you do that. And that's how your children learn the skills to overcome the challenges, is by you like being by their side and teaching them why people behave badly sometimes. And, you know,
Yeah, I love that.
it's hard. It's hard, but man, it makes you strong as a family going
Yeah.
through those types of things. So don't be too afraid of them. Actually, if you can, maybe even welcome them as a gift of sorts, right? Like a gift to challenge you to be stronger as a family. So
Yeah.
they make you level up. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
There is no stagnancy in this choice, in this type of family building. You will be forced to grow. So
Yeah.
yeah.
it seems like, way back when that even adoption was kind of a, more of a hush hush thing. A lot of people in older generations grew up not knowing that they were adopted, or,
True.
that kind of thing. And I feel like that's just not really a thing anymore,
Hmm.
with adoption.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping, there was somebody that said the other day that their kids, maybe it was Eric, had said that his kids grew up with other kids that knew that they were donor conceived in school even. And so just like kind of how there's been a shift in adoption, I hope there's kind of that shift too, where our kid can, it's just kind of, normal in quotes, where
Hmm.
they don't have to feel like this, different outsider. They're just another kid with another family that was made a different way.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of teachers reach out to me about my modern family tree project that I put
Yeah.
out last week, and
Yep.
they've asked for copies. And so several teachers and parents are going to be spreading that in schools just so they can encourage and they recognize that there needs to be a more modern look at family. And not just from the genetic standpoint, but from epigenetics too, and how the environment influences our genes. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so hoping that the same will happen for the kids' sake. So they don't have to have as much heartache. I mean, I think I posted a little bit earlier in the month or last month about that telling your child early doesn't guarantee you're going to avoid challenges. It allows you to face those challenges together as a family.
Sure.
That's what it's all about. And yeah, hopefully this path gets easier.
I can kind of look back at us, even just, a year or 2 years, and see a lot of growth and a lot of change, and in our ideas. And we're both definitely willing to learn and shift our plan based on what we think is best. And so, you've been a big part of that for us, and
Oh, thanks.
just all of the information that you put out there, and all the help that you give in your online presence and through Three Makes Baby and all of those things. That's all been huge. And meeting other people and having those types of conversations with them too, and kind
Hmm.
of getting a glimpse into the future a little bit of what it's going to be like to raise donor conceived children and that kind of thing.
Hmm. Absolutely. And there's just going to be so many more generations to come. Well, I can't wait for you to hear some of the other podcasts in it. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it'd be so cool just to have like a meetup someday, where we all meet somewhere and can meet each other and just have conversations, get to know each other. It just seems like there's just, could be some really cool things to come from it. So
That would be great. Yeah, I would love that. We're not too far from you, so maybe one day we'll be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee or something.
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And when are you due?
We are due February 25th.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, a
so
February baby. That's my birth month. So I'm
me
rooting. I'm
too.
rooting for that. Yeah.
Yeah, mine's the 20th, so I'm kind of hoping for
Oh,
that. Yeah,
perfect.
so it's also a leap year, so it could kind of fall anywhere in there. I don't know.
Oh,
So,
that's cool.
yeah.
That's so exciting. Well, I am just thrilled to know you and to be able to follow your story and get to see baby when she gets here on Insta, maybe in person someday.
Yeah, maybe so.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you and all that you do for people like me.
Oh, thanks. Man, that makes it worth it. Tell your wife hi and yeah, we will I'm sure we'll chat soon. If you want to learn how to handle questions with your family and friends and acquaintances about infertility, about the way you've grown your family, use the consider if exercise to help you be quick on your feet. It's in Three Makes a Baby, my book on Amazon. Thanks for listening. If you would like to follow me for more content, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Jana Rupnow LPC. And you can also grab a copy of my book, Three Makes Baby, on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and Target.com. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and rate it and share it with a friend if you like it. Have a great day.